Hello again, Struck Quop. Today I'm bringing you another build video for Torchlight 3 Early Access. This one is a Dusk Mage plus Flaming Destroyer, and I decided to call it the original Pyromancer Dusk Mage plus Flaming Destroyer build. So if you want to skip to certain parts of the video, you can use the timestamps in the description of the video. So hope that helps you. Keep in mind, when I was playing this build and when I was gearing up for the build, I couldn't get one specific item. This is the Molten Reach. With the Molten Reach we can change Entropy to an 8-second cooldown skill and make it shoot extra projectiles. If you were wondering what the build might have looked like with it, that's a preview. So this is the skill, this is it in slow motion. And I'm gonna show you a recording of this in action. So keep that in mind. Instead of the Arc of Light that lets me shoot out Absolver bolts with my Holy Bolt, I would have preferred to use Molten Reach. But I couldn't get it, even spending 20-30 minutes pumping the cheat NPC. It probably was just removed from the drop table on the test server where this was leveled up. The build is fun, the build is interesting, and I decided to focus more on the relic side of things rather than the Dusk Mage class of things. So it's all about fire, it's all about proccing certain things, and with the Molten Reach, Entropy would be proccing twice as often all those falling swords, all those firestorms, all those magma bursts. I think it's a fun build and many of you might enjoy playing it, and it could kind of be called proc monster, not as much as the build I uploaded yesterday for the sharpshooter, the electrified, but it also is some sort of a proc monster build. It feels a little bit weaker than the one I uploaded for the sharpshooter yesterday, but it's still a fun build and it's still pretty nice. And I hope many of you really receive the build well. So let's first talk about the skills and then the other things. Here we are at the skills segment where I talk about the skills I've selected and why. But before we move forward, I'd like you to keep in mind that I've got +2 light and dark skills, which comes from having a Celestial Mask that gives me +2 dark skills, but you only get +1 if you only have this one item. In order to get +2 on the dark skills, you need to wear another 2 pieces of the Celestial set, and I would suggest for this build to go for Celestial Gauntlets and Boots equipped together with the mask, and then in the Legendarium you put the Celestial Cuirass. Now that we've gotten this out of the way, you see where I get my +2 dark and light skills. So let's talk about the skills. You can see now with the +2 bonus levels, this doesn't need to be level 10, it can be 8 +2. So this gives me the tier 3 of Holy Bolt. So tier 3 Holy Bolt, then tier 2 Light Spear for the Harmonic Form duration, tier 2 Energy Spike for the Harmonic Form duration, tier 3 Entropy, pretty decent. Tier 2 Unholy Bolt, I strongly suggest this for dark skills damage, and tier 2 Shadow Step for the increased mana regeneration. If you find that you don't need the mana regeneration, you can just put 1 point here only and save yourself 3 points and put them elsewhere. For example, like Dark Spears for the cooldown. And Dark Spears tier 2, you only want Dark Spears tier 2 if you're using Molten Reach. And even then it's not a must-have, but with this 10% cooldown reduction, if you have this at tier 2, with the Molten Reach, Entropy turns into a 8-second cooldown skill, which means you're saving 0.8 seconds with tier 2 Dark Spears, which means 7.2 second cooldown. It's not a must-have, but the Molten Reach, in my opinion, is the better item out of Arc of Light or Molten Reach. So ideally, if I could get the Molten Reach, I would be using that instead of Arc of Light. I would not suggest going for removing the Wideload's Cavebreaker, because it helps with procs, but you could use Arc of Light and Molten Reach and remove the Cavebreaker if you prefer to do so. But more about the Legendarium in a moment. So back to the skills. there's one more thing you might keep in mind. A helmet can give you +1 to a skill level of a skill you're wearing. Meaning, for example, anything that's more than 1 skill point invested into, so you can remove it and still have the skill equipped. So avoid Nimble Flames and Dark Spears as +1. Anything else from the skills I've invested into other than the passive skills would be fine. So those 2 skills, those 4 skills here, and this one, and this one. So Summoning Smash, Cloak of Flames and Blazing Pure can also give you +1 skill level. You can only get that on a hat, and if you get it, that means you can max out all 3 passives. Keep in mind I'm 59, so I'm missing 1 point. I'm 69 out of 70 points. Hey, 69. But yeah, keep that in mind. You could in theory max out Ignition Source and get 25% chance to burn. There's ways to do things differently. You can remove 1 point from Magma Burst or Firestorm and put it into Ignition Source, and that could work. Or the 3 points that you could remove from Shadow Step if you don't need the mana regen. You can also put one of those into Ignition Source and then the other points into Energizer. If you don't want to go for that many relic things, I'm gonna mention some setups in a moment. Now, 5 points into Firestorm is great. It's a proc, and this is another proc, and then we have another proc from tier 1 Summoning Smash, and the tier 2 Summoning Smash can trigger procs. And then there's the Wideload Cavebreaker, which is another proc which can also trigger other procs. So I'm using the word proc too much, so hope you're paying attention here and you don't get confused. What proc means, it's things that can happen, that can get triggered on hit, on hitting critically hitting a burning enemy and so on. Things that get triggered, that's what proc means to those who may not know. So this is when you hit a burning fall. This is when you kill a burning enemy or when you critically hit a burning enemy. And this gives you a burn chance, so this pretty much is a good synergy. This unfortunately does not burn. It does fire damage and it does it per second, but it doesn't do it as a burn on the enemy. It does it where the damage is centered, in the pure radius. This however can burn, and this also can burn, so this synergizes well. But I still think if you don't have burn chance on weapons, you need Ignition Source. If you do have a burn chance on a weapon, like this one, you do want that. But still, burn chance on a weapon seems a little bit of a waste because you're losing a lot of flat damage. But you can get instead of like 50% burn chance on a weapon, you can get like 10-15 on a gauntlet. It's not gonna be much, but it's still gonna be better than nothing. But if you don't have a weapon like the one I'm using with a ton of flat damage, something with burn is nice. So I think this pretty much sums up all the skills, but let's talk about alternative ways of playing. Well, you could, for example, as I said, get Energizer. If you don't need this Ignition Source, you can get Energizer. Or you can decide, okay, I don't want to use Entropy for damage, I want to use Entropy just for procs. Well, then you don't need the 4 points in Unholy Bolt if you're not gonna use Entropy for damage. If you just wanted to build the Dark Buff bar and to proc certain things, that's also gonna work, but I don't suggest doing that because Entropy is decent damage, it's amazing damage, even on an 8-second cooldown with the Molten Reach. So there are things you can do. I mean, you can even try and implement Damnation, but you don't have room for it, so you're gonna have to get rid of Light Spear from the skill bar, or Nimble Flames from the skill bar, but if you're getting rid of it, might as well remove the points. But don't remove the points from Light Spear if you don't use it in the skill bar, because you need that duration. There's alternative things you can take. If you don't want Dark Spears, which I think is a great way of building the Dark Buff bar, especially if you use the Molten Reach. When Entropy is gonna be on a cooldown, you're gonna need that one to help you build the Dark Buff so you can get Harmonic Form quicker. But there's things like Consecration you can use, or like Luminous Run if you want double the movement skills. So there are options. I mean, you can get rid of Holy Bolt and maybe play Absolver, or maybe play Holy Fury or Radiant Blast if you like it. But consider putting at least 4 points into Holy Bolt if you wanna be using those for damage, for the white skills damage. So there's ways to rework the skills. I'm not gonna do that many alternative choices. You should have already seen some of them on the screen. So hope you like some of them. But my idea for the Pyromancer is to focus on the Flaming Destroyer rather than the Light and Dark. Now that we've talked about skills, let's move on to the Legendarium. My ideal setup is Celestial Gauntlets, Molten Reach and Wideload Cavebreaker. As I mentioned, if you don't like Molten Reach or if you don't have it, Arc of Light is a great extra choice. If you don't like Wideload's Cavebreaker and you don't want to go for a build that relies too much on procs, you can just get Arc of Light and Molten Reach together. And that's a great way of doing it as well. It's a fun way of doing it for sure. So yeah, that's just some suggestions from me, but my ideal setup again, Celestial Gauntlets, Molten Reach and Wideload Cavebreaker. There's other things, for example you can slot more celestial things like the gauntlets, the boots, if you want their effects, or the hat, but you still need to equip 3 celestial pieces at least to get the set bonuses. There are other things you could experiment with depending whether you are using Holy Bolt or not. So there's the Brilliant Herald if you want to use it. There's the Celestial Pants that can give you Harmonic buff, damage buff increased by another 50% and Harmonic Form mana regeneration. But I think the Wideload Cavebreaker gives me better DPS because it gives me DPS all the time rather than this Celestial Pants. That's why I'm using it. But the Celestial Pants are not a bad choice per se. So that pretty much sums up this part of things. Let's move on to the pet skills quickly. I prefer to use the crit chance aura, but crit chance caps at 40%, so if you think you don't need it and you need more defenses, you can use defender. If you need more movement speed, running partner. If you want block chance, you can use increased awareness. Keep in mind, if you're playing with other people, you cannot use the same aura multiple times. So if your teammate is already using the crit chance aura, then pick another one. If you have 4 people in the team, make sure every person is using a different aura, so you can have all 4 of those active for the whole team. Healing Friendship is my favorite active skill. I love it. It works very well, especially if you're reducing the cooldown. It's a little bit of extra healing, so it goes pretty decently. Battle Cry if you want damage, defensive posture if you want defenses, and if you're using this you might as well use this because it's gonna be nice stacking that. Then over in this slot I either go for stun or for immobilize, or when playing summoners, when Necropopper is fixed, I would go for that. This is not a summoner, so between Screeching Stun and Immobilize, I prefer the Immobilize because it's a chance, it doesn't have cooldown, and it's a decent chance, 25% to Immobilize for 2 seconds rather than Stun for 1 second. I only take the Stun on stun builds, on Realm Master builds, where I need that for the synergy of damage to stunned. And that's it for the skills. Next I'm gonna talk about other things such as the gear. And here we are at the gear segment where I'm going to talk about items, affixes and other gear related things for you and your pet. First I'd like to talk about the celestial pieces that I strongly urge you to wear. I would say wear the celestial mask, gauntlets and boots. You need at least 3 pieces of the celestial set so that you can get that set bonus, and you don't get the set bonus just for the pieces that are equipped, but also for the legendarium pieces. For me that's the celestial cuirass that's in the legendarium. So this one can only get the set bonus if you are wearing 3 pieces already. So with the celestial mask you get dark skills, with the gauntlets you get dark skills levels, with the gauntlets you get the harmonic form overloaded buff, and with the celestial boots you get mana infused, which is great for your upkeep of spamming things. Now the shoulders are a good alternative choice if you don't have the boots, or if you're swatting the boots or the gauntlets. But in this build I would suggest not to swat boots, gauntlets or a mask, and to just wear those 3 items, so you have more room for other things in the Legendarium. So I'm only wearing Celestial Pauldrons because I don't have better ones. See, I don't have something that's level 50 something and gives me crit damage and block chance and defense, but ideally you would be wearing a blue or legendary shoulder. Something like arc powered shoulders would be amazing. In fact, arc powered shoulders could be the best in SWAT legendary power for proc builds in the shoulder SWAT. You can also wear for survivability Skittering Shoulders if you find that you're dying a lot. Well, get yourself a Skittering Shoulder. It's not gonna work all the time, but when you do activate Summoning Smash, the big relic power, you would be getting a 15-second AoE field on the ground, and while you're in that field you get 50% damage reduction. So it's great. Now let's talk weapons. We've got 3 choices. If you wanna be a glass cannon, then you have a great weapon. If you want to be glass cannon, focus item is not worth it. Focus items, the developers seem to not want focus items to be for glass cannon versions, but for utility versions. For versions when you get mana regen, endurance regen, where you get other things like ammo regeneration, heat dissipation and so on. So they're more of a utility build rather than a glass cannon build. And shield if you wanna be more tanky. I think if people would be pushing harder difficulties, most people would probably find one-handed and shield to be the best way to go, unless they can obliterate everything with a very good two-hander with a ton of damage and not need the defenses. But the Fuzzier dungeon right now is super boring, and after a certain level it just gets boring. It becomes super slow to kill stuff. Even with a super high damage build it becomes boring, and even if you're playing a glass cannon on those, you're still gonna take forever to kill stuff, especially if you're doing it solo. So yeah, I think playing defensive is a very good way. It's a very good way to play many builds, and let's talk about affixes for the weapons. You would want flat damage in the top, 2 times flat damage in the middle, and then a socket of more flat damage in the bottom. On one-handed weapons like this one for example, you cannot get the flat damage that you have in the middle as an affix from a socket. So for example, weapon like this already has ice at the top and ice in the middle. Well, I cannot get ice in the bottom from the socket, but I can get another type of flat damage, and that's still good DPS. For two-handers it's slightly different. You can actually get ice at the top, ice in the middle, and then ice in the socket, but only because it's a two-hander. And two-handers also get another crit hit chance at the top, which is built in. So you're not gonna see any more two-handed weapons without crit chance at the top set of affixes, at the innate affixes. So for a two-hander you would want something like flat damage at the top with crit chance, and then at the bottom, if you get lucky, to get 3 times flat damage, amazing. If you don't, 2 times flat and crit chance, 2 times flat and crit damage would do great things for you, and then just roll it for another flat from the sockets. Something to keep in mind is chance to burn is great. For builds like this, chance to burn is amazing. You can get it on weapons, but I think they've removed it so that you can no longer get it. This is an old item, I think, that dropped before the changes. At least that's how I think it was. Or maybe they only removed it from offhands. Maybe it no longer drops on offhands but still drops on weapons. But you can get like 10-15% chance to burn on gauntlets now. That's the new change. Chance to shock, chance to poison, and all those other chances to cause ailments have been moved to drop on gauntlets. So it's worth it, but it's not worth sacrificing 700 plus flat damage to get the burn. Unless you want to be proccing more, then maybe it's hard to weigh them down. I think they're equally important, but probably most people would prefer the solid flat damage that's there always, and not only when things proc. For the shield you would want flat defense at the top and block chance. There's shields that only give you defense, that only give you block chance but don't give you defense, but that's not one of those. But those are not good. So I'm gonna try and show you one of those shields. If I've got one here, I should have somewhere a shield like that. Maybe I've gotten rid of them all, but you definitely want a shield with good defense at the top, decent chance to block, maybe chance to knock back. Chance to knock back is great, and some other things. So this is actually a better shield to wear for me nowadays. Chance to slow is good, but it's not a must-have for you. If you get lucky, you can get even this much elemental damage, elemental defense I mean, on a shield. So if you get defense at the top, block chance at the bottom, chance to knock back as well at the bottom, you're gonna have a lot of block chance, a lot of defense, and then you can maybe add some more elemental or regular defense as an affix from socketing. I would avoid chance to slow and other things like that. I couldn't show you a bad shield because I maybe got rid of them all. But yeah, you can no longer get a chance to burn, I think. So try to get them on gauntlets. And this brings us to the gauntlets. You would want for the gauntlets some crit damage if you can get it, block chance, evasion, relic energy cost or relic energy charge rate, more defenses, and chance to burn if you're lucky. So some of those affixes, look for those. Avoid evasion, go for block, because you're playing fire relic, which can give you a lot of evasion from things like this one gives you 20. And you can even get it to give you 40, which is the cap with the tier 1, but it's an overkill. This one can give you up to 12.5 when maxed out, or 10 at level 4 evasion percent. This one gives you 10% evasion as well while it's active, so you get a lot of evasion from various places with this relic. So you don't need evasion, you need block chance. 40% block chance and 40% evasion are the caps, which makes it a total of 34% chance to get hit, if my numbers were correct. I kind of forgot, but I think that was the right number. So on boots you would want mana regen, crit damage, and then maybe some more defense and a socket. Unless you're using blue boots, then you can get flat damage that matches the way I mentioned earlier. You can for example get ice here, and then other flats. Then you can get ice here as flat, ice here as percent, ice here as flat, ice here as percent, and then ice as a percent on the boots. This is just an example. Replace ice with any element you can, and it's gonna be okay. The boots are only gonna be worth it if they give you percent to a specific element and then crit damage. And then you have that same percent here, and you have the same flat here, and in the weapon. Otherwise, it's better to just ignore this extra percent and just get something with crit damage. In fact, I strongly suggest not wearing blue boots for this build and going only for the celestial ones. So mana regen in the boots and crit damage and defense are the best stats. For the mask, the best stats would be mana regen, crit chance, and +1 to a skill level of a skill you have more than 1 point into. And that brings us to the pets. But before I talk about the pets, I'd like to mention something weird as a synergy. Chance to shock and shock bolts would be nice. You're not doing a shock build, but shock bolts can trigger other procs. So if you can squeeze in some chance to shock and shock bolts, it could be pretty interesting synergy if you wanna go that route and explore this weird synergy. So for the pets, my favorite items are Dryad Neckband, which on pet hits you recover 3% HP for you and the pet. And well, this means if it triggers on pet hits, you probably want faster attack speed, and that's true. Faster attack speed, it's nice, so get attack speed or cooldown reduction, or both of them, or burn chance. So that's the three things I could go for: faster cooldown for pet active skills, pet attack speed, and chance to burn. Unless you're going for the weird build with the shock, then pet causes shock is also nice. But Drought Neck Band is a must-have in my opinion for some builds like that, where you want the pet to be hitting quickly to get healed. For the pet token, you would want again faster cooldown for pet active skills, chance to burn, or attack speed, something like that. As for bases, the Inferno token is nice with the Fire Nova. And the other Nova item, which I think was called, what was it called? Storm something? No, it was called Clockwork token. Clockwork token also works fine, but I would suggest maybe the Inferno one. The Inferno one seems to be good, and yeah, the Nova of the pet can proc some of the other stuff for us, like the Cavebreaker, the Firestorm, the Magma Burst, etc. So consider using the Inferno token. And for the others, you could either use another Nova one, or you can use Token of Invigoration. It's amazing. 10% chance to refresh cooldown of pet's active skills on pet hits. For this one you would also want the synergy of faster attack speed, and again you would want cooldown for pet active skills and maybe chance to burn or pet attack speed. Alternatively, if the pet dies a What Phoenix token, or if you want to be farming and looting everything, token of rapid bartering. And that's pretty much it for the pet items. I might have missed certain things and not talked about certain stuff. So if I did, then look into the text version of the build, which is in the description and normally in the comment section as a pinned comment. One more thing before we move on to the gameplay segment: consider, if you don't have a good blue weapon, using Arc of Light, the Wideload's Cavebreaker, or the Molten Reach equipped. That means you can open up a Legendarium slot for something else, and that's until you get a good blue weapon to wear. That's it for the gear. Next I'm gonna show you more gameplay footage. And here we are at the gameplay segment, where I talk about how I play the build and I show you a little bit more gameplay if you were thirsty and if you wanted to see some more of the build in action. So there's not much to say other than I hope you get the Molten Reach when gearing up for a build like this, but the Arc of Light is definitely a nice choice. Spam Holy Bolt and use Entropy and Light Spears to build up the light and dark buffs. Holy Bolt builds the light, Entropy and Dark Spear builds the dark buff. When you've built the dark buff bar, you get Harmonic Form, which gives you a ton of extra damage, especially when wearing set boosted Celestial Gauntlets. You can either focus on using Flaming Pillars, Blazing Pillars more, or you can use Cloak of Flames more, or you could use Cloak of Flames and then use Blazing Pillars to benefit from the extra damage for the pillars from the Cloak of Flames. You can use Nimble Flames, even though it's one pointer, it's pretty nice to give you that extra evasion and those extra fire novas that can proc certain other things if the enemies are near you. And I strongly suggest for Summoning Smash, for the big relic skill, to try and use it right when your Harmonic Form starts, because if you've got tier 2 Summoning Smash, and you use it during Harmonic Form, all those falling meteors and swords and all of its damage would benefit from the increased damage. And to top it off, you might even want to use Cloak of Flames, then use the Summoning Smash. So this pretty much sums up the build. If you'd like to get notified when I upload more content, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss the content update notifications. The content you would expect to see on my channel is builds and guides and info news videos, as well as other type of content for wooters of all sorts, RPGs, ARPGs, tactical RPGs, shooter wooters, and other things in between. Thanks for watching, keep it cool, struck up, and until next time.